Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual panel discussion, a program hosted by ETCIO and brought to you by Edgeo, an edge-enabled software solutions provider powering unmatched, secure digital experiences through a seamlessly integrated delivery of applications and streaming platform. The topic for today's discussion is Revolutionize Your Travel E-commerce Experiences with Digital Technologies. In this session, you will hear from some of the IT leaders and experts on how digital technologies and platforms are helping aviation and travel e-commerce businesses to create better audience engagement and to attract more digital traffic. We have industry practitioners who've been there, done that, and are here to help. With me today is Charlie Russell, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Edgeo. Good evening, Charlie. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, good afternoon. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Also, a big thank you to all our audience for tuning into today's session. Please keep sharing your questions with us in the chat window, and we will have our panelists respond to them after the discussion. And now, let me kickstart today's session by welcoming our esteemed panelists. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished set of panelists. They are Rajesh Dalal, Vice President IT Infrastructure and Security for Make My Trip, Mukesh Sareen, CIO Alliance Air, Saurav Sinha, CIO Interglobe Aviation, Nirmal NR, CEO Zoomcar, and Charlie Russell, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Edgeo. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. A very good evening to all of you. And now, before we dive into the discussion, let me set a bit of context for our conversation. Today, businesses, irrespective of the sector, size, scale, or industry, are extending their digital foothold to stay ahead of competition. With multi-channel digital support, businesses can create a powerful e-commerce brand image among global consumers. In order to survive and thrive in the current market scenario, it is crucial for travel e-commerce businesses to leverage the right digital technology and partners. With that as the premise, let me start off with you, Mr. Sinha. Mr. Sinha, you represent the aviation sector, which is now beginning to see a dramatic recovery and a complete turnaround after the COVID crisis. We are seeing the rise of the new phenomena of revenge travel. Uh, to survive and thrive in the current market scenario, it is crucial for organizations like yours to leverage the right digital technology and partners. How are you fructifying this vision? How are you applying the just-in-time techniques and digital capabilities to maximize your business channels and to be able to respond faster to the business demand?
Thank you, Sneha, and good afternoon, everybody, my fellow panelists and the team from ETCIO. Yes, while the digital technologies were in vogue, were being used even before the pandemic started, I think the use of digital technologies actually enhanced, and I'm not talking from an aviation perspective. Aviation went through a very, very rough patch in the last 2 years. It's only now that we are seeing quite a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, I must say. Whether it is the revenge travel, whether it is more of leisure travel, corporate travel, we can keep those discussions aside for the time being. Now, coming back to the pandemic, actually all of us know that we really got engaged on the digital platforms for our day-to-day life. I mean, be it for purchasing groceries, getting things delivered at home, be it food, be it any kind of daily use stuff as well. And also the government of India had promoted quite a bit into the digital technology in terms of the COVID information, vaccination, and so on and so forth. Now, keeping that in perspective, I don't think the travel industry could be an exception for that matter. In certain cases, the government has really pushed our travelers, our customers to use digital technology, especially in the area of web check-in or mobile check-in for that matter, both for passengers and baggage as well, where we used to dwell around 35-40% web check-in. I mean, number of passengers who would check in through the mobile or the web pre-pandemic, in spite of all our efforts. And when this was made mandatory, it went up to 88-89%. Now it has settled somewhere around 82-83%. So there is that part of it. The second part of it is, obviously people have got more used to digital. They would like to do more on their smartphones, more on their mobile phones, and aviation obviously cannot stay away from that. While we have never thought of staying away, but I think the engagement has to only increase. And that's what we are undertaking, a path of transformation at our end, where we engage with the customer right from the time that he books a ticket till the time he leaves the airport on arrival, and also post his departure, post his arrival. We continue to engage with him on social media platforms, getting feedback through different mediums, and so on and so forth. So I think there is quite a bit of change which we are seeing, especially in change in the customer behavior, and also in terms of the government initiatives as well, like Digi Yatra, face recognition, digital travel credential, which I can
Contactless,
yeah,
touchless.
contactless, touchless, and it is not only for our customers. I must say, it is also for our employees as well. We have done quite a bit of it for our employees as well. So as we go through this session, I will be more than happy to elaborate on some of those aspects if the interest is there. For now, over to you, Sneha. Thank you so much.
Right, right. If you could, Mr. Sinha, if you could talk about some of the key initiatives you've undertaken after the first and the second wave that have really helped your business in terms of digital capabilities. Anything that you have, any digital capabilities that you've added in your technology arsenal?
So let's talk from two aspects. One from an employee aspect, and another from, and when I say employee, it is the last mile employee, the people who are at different customer touch points, be it at the airport, be it on the aircraft, and so on. And quite a bit of it was done because customer orientation, digital e-commerce travel has been in vogue for quite some time. It's been vogue for decades almost. Okay. While things have improved, we have gone into more of personalization, understanding the customer, getting a profile of him, and so on and so forth. While those things involving different technologies, AI, big data, and all that stuff. But I think one of the things that we did pretty well within our organization was our customer touch points. Today, what happens is that, I mean, not today, I mean, it's been almost a year now that we have deployed full-fledged for all our cabin crew personnel. So right from the time they leave their hotel or home till the time they get back, the entire process is digitized today. They get all, and what they use as the platform is their own personal mobile phones. It's not that we have to provide a tablet or something like that to them. So every information is there. So that's from an employee perspective. Also from the engineers which are on the ground who are responsible for aircraft turnarounds. Their process of clearing an aircraft, what we call it in our terminology, clearing an aircraft, including the fuel uplifts that we do and monitor the fuel uplifts and report it back. All these processes are now, I would say, close to 80-85% digitized. And I was pretty surprised because my focus was primarily not only on the development of this tool or the solution, but also in terms of adoption, because it involves 7,000, 8,000 crew members, 3,000-4,000 engineers, and again cockpit crew plus ground staff, and the number of people who will be using these kind of technologies are huge. And to ensure that the adoption is nothing less than 100% is definitely a task that one has to pursue and be successful at. So we have been pretty successful in that. And as we went, we went in steps in terms of, we didn't do a big bang rollout. So we went in steps. So that is from, in short, from an employee perspective, we can actually, enhance the customer perspective. And what we call as part of the IATA is our trade association, International Air Transport Association. So they and the IATA members had actually come through, and what they said was that digital travel credential, which means every customer today should have a travel credential. It's not the travel PNR. It's very different from there, from that, because in the PNR, you only provide the travel details of the customer, but I need to understand the customer beyond that. For example, when you order on Amazon, they recognize you by your mobile number. We should be able to recognize that, so that it is not only his travel or her travel on an airline, but the entire process of him coming into the airport, going for the check-in,
The
dropping off
end-to-end
back, end to
experience.
end. And there you need, cooperation, and I would say an integrated approach, creating an entire ecosystem with the security folks, with the airport folks, and of course the airline. And that's what we are trying to do with necessary support from the airports, with necessary support from the government, because as part of DigiYatra, each one of us would have a digital identity, or the digital travel credential, and we should be in control as a customer. No entity should have a free access to my information. We should be in control of the data, of our own personal data, and that is coming from PII and IT Act and all that stuff. So we should be in control. If somebody wants only our passport number, that's it. We just give them the passport number. If somebody wants to know name, passport number, age, address, and all that, we just only give that. So all that I'm saying here is that yes, digitization in travel is increasing. How it has helped us, I think from an employee perspective, productivity has definitely improved, and of course the motivation of the team. They are able to service the customers at the customer touch points much more efficiently than what they were used to do before. The next step, of course, would be a kind of a recommendation engine for them, so that they don't have to go back to their manuals and SOPs and getting feedback from getting orders from their managers, instructions. So that would be reduced, in my view.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinha. You gave us a very broad overview of the digitization that's happening on the employee front and also on the customer front, where you're bringing in perspectives of ease and seamless experience. You also spoke about the digital travel credential and how it can provide an end-to-end experience and an integrated approach within the ecosystem. You spoke about the recommendation engines enhancing customer touch points during the COVID period. I'd like to take this thread to Mr. Sareen, and I'd like to understand from you, Mr. Sareen, customer experience in the airline industry is very critical. It can never be undermined, whether it is in person, through self-service booths, online, or any other choice of channel. But still, there are incidents of low site conversion. It gets challenging sometimes for the airline companies to attract and convert visitors to their site. So how are you trying to address this problem, and how are you trying to increase the site conversion to generate a substantial amount of revenue from that stream, and what role do you see technology performing there, digital technologies performing there?
I was about to say that, because what Mr. Sinha has covered from airlines perspective, I totally agree with that. Whatever they are doing, the same thing is being done at our alliance here also. We are in process of setting up totally a new setup, because we were integrated with Air India so far. So now we are starting afresh. But what you are raising the issue is a very, very valid issue. We are saying that digitalization is bringing in more traffic. But the problem is, I'll only talk about the problem. The good things Mr. Sinha has already spoken about. The complexity of travel has increased manifold. Okay, if you see the Indian clientele, you have a big combination of rural and urban. Maybe the rural area is now having a complexity to handle the technology part in terms of digital.
Correct.
Volumes are becoming high. People have a lot of choices. Like say we have a gentleman from Make My Trip. Look to book ratio for airline industry has become very high. Now the funnel on the top is very broad, and conversion rate is very low. So now somewhere we have to draw a line. What is going to give me the ROI? What is the best? I mean, unnecessarily bringing in the digital traffic is not going to serve the purpose until unless there is an ROI. Then the next challenge is the privacy part of it. In airlines ecosystem, let's say, especially when we talk of GDPR, very stringent laws are there, and awareness among the employees, awareness among the people who are travelers also, it's very low as of now. People don't know what are their rights, and even airlines employees also do not know how to take care of these laws also at the same time. Technology can no doubt control it, but we are collecting far more information in multiple ecosystems, with the challenge is becoming that every ecosystem is getting my data. So I may be the controller, but the processors are many now. Now, the contractual obligations, if they're not well documented, there's going to be a problem. So these are 4 or 5 challenges that's becoming complex. For a normal rural traveler, this is becoming a problem. Like especially when I talk about Alliance here, we have a lot of rural traffic coming into the metros. So this is where people have candy phones now, getting soft copy of voting card, filling up COVID form. All those challenges are there. So we are trying to work out strategy for that. Extra digital traffic technologies like CDN, we are trying to rope in CDN there. So if you compare GAFA element entities versus entities like Alliance here, I think we are nowhere near that. I mean, recently I've been hearing that there is a talk going on at the airports that common use equipment also, whether the airline should pitch in for their own setup. So, I mean, this is very, very cumbersome process. I mean, there are a lot of nitty-gritties involved in this. LCCs, ultra LCCs are not going to exist in that case. So a lot of challenges are there by bringing in the digital technology. That is also true. And the human touch is going.
Right.
I mean, seeing the huge queues at the airport, outside the airport, inside the airport, immigration, all these challenges are huge. Recent happening at Heathrow Airport about the baggage. Without baggage, travel is useless.
Correct.
I mean, I'm living without clothes. I'm living without my entire set of gametes which I'm going to use. So digital is having a drawback, and there are so many aviation entities involved in a travel. I think seeing the volumes of the travel versus the complexity, somewhere we have to draw a line to make it simpler for a normal traveler. Because if you are having hassles in traveling, then it is no more fun. The journey should be very, very, very smooth. So that's my point.
True.
Of course, technologies are there to take care of that, but then this is the ground reality. I mean, what Mr. Sinha said, I mean, it's absolutely fine, perfectly fine. I mean, that is what I think most of the airlines are doing. But the challenges are also, I thought I'll bring up the challenges so that the key players who are there, so they can bring a common ecosystem where we can solve these issues.
Right.
And over to you, Sneha.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sareen, you brought in a very interesting element of the complexities that you see, the ground realities, the real world perspective of all the challenges that are coming in terms of the the look to book ratio, the rural customers, so the customer demographics, the challenges that come with it, the need for servicing these customers, and all of these things. Now, and you also spoke about customer experience not being able to match up with the GAFAs of the world. I'll take that thread to Mr. Dalal, but before that, I'd like to involve Charlie in this conversation. And Charlie, you heard the gentleman from the aviation sector talk about what's really happening in terms of digital technology deployment, and what are some of the issues that need to be addressed despite the technology, the human element, and the other demographics and profiles that come to play with it, and the customer experience angle also. So can you talk about how players like Edgeo could help aviation sector create better engagement with their travelers, attract more digital traffic? What are some of the ways in which you could help in this scenario?
Sure. So Edgeo is a company that has a very strong network and very strong developer tools for building websites. And so there's 3 key benefits that Edgeo is able to bring to people in the travel sector. So the first benefit is the performance of the website, the performance of the mobile application. So, we're all seeing situations where people might be looking at different websites, doing some comparison shopping, trying to find the best price, the best inventory, the best location if it's a hotel, the best times if it's a flight, all at the best price. And so it's a very competitive space right now. And as people hop from tab to tab on their browser, or as they pop from different mobile applications, looking, it's the reality that they're looking at you, you're the vendor, and they're looking at your competition.
So
And
customer
one of the
loyalty is
ways,
clearly an oxymoron.
yes, exactly.
Right.
So one of the ways that they make that decision is this site fast. If they change want to type in some dates and hit enter, if the site loads up very quickly and they give their options very quickly and it sorts very quickly, they say, oh, I want to sort by airline, or I want to leave at this time, or I'm looking for a location for a hotel that's here. If that loads very, very quickly, if it's very responsive to them, that's going to make them in favor of making a decision to use your website, to use your mobile app, and to make a purchase through you in the e-commerce side of things. So that speed of the website is very, very important. And so one of the things that Edgio has helped people do is literally deliver sub-second performance. We have seen e-commerce sites where before Edgio, it might take 5 seconds for a page to load. After Edgio, it might load in literally the blink of an eye, less than a second. So, one way is performance. The second thing is security. We're all very concerned about the security of the application, the security of the website. And so Edgio offers a full breadth of web protection tools so that you can protect against protect your web application with a firewall. You can protect against DDoS attacks. There are a lot of bots now. And so is this a good bot or a bad bot? There's bots constantly hitting your website, constantly hitting your mobile application. So that second one is security. And then the third one is really for the people who build the websites. So you folks who are out there working with these digital platforms, there's a team that builds that website, that builds that mobile application, and that is constantly trying to feed it new information. As inventory levels change, oh, this is the last room available in this hotel. Then maybe you flag it, or you've got 2 people looking for that. It's a very dynamic environment, and so the ability for the builders to be able to release new features twice as fast, to be able to have very high degrees of visibility into how is the site performing. If they have a dashboard, the people behind the scenes have a dashboard that lets them see what's going on, anticipate problems before they hit the customer. So it really boils down to those 3 things, a very, very fast website, a secure website, and the tools for the builders behind the scenes. So that's what Edgio can help e-commerce and digital travel and digital hospitality sites do.
Right, right. Thanks, Charlie. Now, I'd like to take this point to Mr. Dalal. Mr. Dalal, you represent India's first and largest online travel company. You have over 47% of the market share. And as Mr. Sareen was pointing out, the GAFAs of the world have really democratized the customer expectations across industries, especially in a segment like travel. Customer experience becomes very pertinent. So customers expect the same kind of fast, reliable, responsive, secure, like Charlie said, user-friendly and frictionless experience, whether it's on the site, mobile, online channel. There is a zero tolerance for performance deterioration or security risk. So how do you make sure that you provide an experience to your customers that is both performance oriented and is also based on the speed of execution? What are some of the key elements you've brought in within your customer experience portfolio to make sure that all of these requirements that the customers have are mostly met?
Thanks, Neha. So, like Charles rightly pointed out, for any e-commerce website, to one of the key reasons why the customer would come to your website, that it has to be a high-performing website. It has to be secure website, and third thing is the UGC content on the site. Right? UGC content on the site plays an important role in ensuring the traveler gets to know about where he's planning to travel, right? So the more the content you have, more easier it becomes for the users to engage and connect to your applications, right? And we use a lot of data science behind the scenes in understanding the customer requirements and demands, follow the customer over the social media trends, look at our CSAT scores. Also, we look at our IVRS, and we have been trying to automate and make all the options which can be easily be done using a self-service option on our IVRS and app. So from a customer engagement point of view, we work with a simple mission. We make travel simple.
Mhm.
So when we offer a bunch of services, right from a flight booking to a bus booking to a cab booking, and even visa services. Recently we have launched the Forex offering, right? So it's an end-to-end travel. We understand our customer needs and we continue innovating to serve them better.
Right, right. Now I'd like to move to Nirmal. Um, Nirmal, you heard what Mr. Dalal had to say about how he's really, what are some of the best practices that he's employed in, creating a site experience that is relevant, contextual, also performance oriented. Now, you're not exactly from a very travel oriented site, but you still deal with, booking cars and, all of these rides. So this is again a very dynamic space in terms of the customer demand, the volume, spikes in terms of time slots in the day. How are you dealing with this constant challenge of availability, performance? Also, the information and pricing needs to be very dynamic in your space. So, how do you leverage digital technologies to better use your inventory, the price changes and the demand? What are some of the processes you've put in place?
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha. And yeah, quite apt, right? So as you said, ours is equally a industry where the demand is very seasonal. So we have spikes. So that spike can be of a weekend. So essentially, Zoomcar is the largest car sharing platform here, which means that you've got two sides of the platform where there are hosts who share the car as well as guests who actually use these cars. Right? So there is demand for cars all across the week, but there are spikes, of course, on a weekend. Right? People want to use the car to go on a weekend trip. That is when you see this. So that is exactly how when our systems are put to test. And think of any of the peaks that you see in December 31st, or let's say October, or the vacations that you have. That is when you see all the spikes, right? But all of this, when we build our systems in terms of both reliability as well as the load that they are supposed to take, it's always built looking at the peak load that we expect in some of these cases, right? And these are all built in such a way that the load or the server space is used as we go. Like for example, when the system adds servers on its own to manage the load, that is one part of it. But at the same time, think of all the data that needs to change. For example, pricing is very dynamic. And airlines, we don't have any competition with the airlines. Airlines have done this long back. But I think ours is a slightly more different kind of thing, right? So it's not like one city to another. We've got
like a variable cost structure.
Yeah. So essentially, ours depends on whether it is popular. This car group is popular in this part of the city. So our data science team exactly uses that data, and also the data in terms of number of searches that are being used before a car is being chosen. So you can decide when to show which car and whom to show that car to, at what point in time, and how many searches, after how many searches do you change the price for him or her, and all that. So that's a lot more complicated as an algorithm now. But I think that makes the return on the whole, every booking becomes very different, right? So I trying to book a car from Bangalore, and maybe you trying to book a car from, let's say, a Bombay. Maybe it's the same car, but same car group, but the kilometers that it is traveled, the ratings that the host has, all of these will actually change the prices that you're going to get. And obviously also your previous history on the platform of having brought the car back on time, or having brought the car in a good condition, having driven the car. So we have something which we call the driver score, which is essentially the driving behavior. We track driving behavior of a driver user, and we have incentives and penalties tied to that. So if you drive well, you get better discounts, and possibly even for the next trip you got rewards. And if you drive poorly, your protection fee, damage protection fee that we charge will go up. Right. So we are using a lot more data right now, and I think over time it's evolved so much that it's very powerful.
Right. So, Nirmal, you really encapsulated it really well, and you also broke it down into pieces and how you're looking at variable prices. Also, it depends on the city, the kind of car group, and also the people, the seasons. So there's a lot of data involved in everything that you do. How exactly are you leveraging data? If you could share some more details around this, and how exactly is machine learning helping you manage all of this information better, also provide a more personalized experience to your customers?
Yeah, so our data science team and the machine learning algorithms are specifically working on, largely the largest part of their work is pricing, right? So it's always about the customer and the history. What do we know about the customer? For a repeat customer, you know a lot more, because which city, what kind of car, what kind of trip did he do or she do, and what was the behavior and the driving behavior. There is a lot of data in that, right? So that the algorithm learns on a regular basis, and it's like very powerful, right? So even during a trip for a new user, you don't have any of this data. The only data that you have currently is only about where is the person searching from, and what is the person searching for, right? And you kind of correlate that with a lot of other data that you have, and the algorithm kind of starts guessing that, okay, this is the behavior, this is the expected person, and starts with a price for that. And then after the number of searches that a person does, and we actually try to reduce the number of searches a person does before making a booking. So these are all things that the algorithm is learning on its own, on the pricing. And even on the driver behavior, right? While somebody's on a trip, I'm going to drive maybe 100 kilometers, right? While I'm driving these 100 kilometers, while I'm driving through in the city, I'm driving outside the city on a highway, the behavior is very different. So now it's going the algorithm kind of takes the learning is all about where is it driving? Is he driving outskirts? Then the expected behavior is something, and you're comparing that and saying that is he a better driver or a worse driver, and putting that on a scale and trying to understand what percentile is he falling in, right? And then providing incentives and real-time incentives to a person to improve his driving behavior during the trip itself. This is what we try to do right now.
Right. Thank you, Nirmal. Now, I'd like to move to Mr. Sinha. Mr. Sinha, in your previous response, you mentioned the digital travel credential. Also, how are you looking at, providing or creating an end-to-end process digitization to personalize your customer experience, also to be able to provide a more satisfying customer service in terms of understanding your customer better, his requirements, his preferences? How are you trying to tie all of this together?
See, what we are planning to do, what we have done to a good extent, and what we will do in the future, and the aviation industry, I'm talking more from a perspective of an aviation industry. Now, from an aviation industry perspective, of course, especially in India, we, as Mr. Sareen was mentioning, that the number of the penetration on the airline's website is comparatively much lower than what it is outside of India. And thanks to MMT for that, Make My Trip, I think there's a lot of traffic which goes into all the OTAs, because for the simple reason that people can verify and all that stuff. But there are ways to figure it out. We haven't really gone that path in India with the aviation industry yet, but there are quite a lot of things to be done in terms of understanding the customer behavior. And that one can do if you are engaging with the customer, as I said, right from the time of booking. You have to first see, what has he booked? And then probably, initiate certain other transactions like an ancillary, like, which would be meal, excess baggage, insurance, and so on and so forth. You also engage with him on the day of the journey to a very good extent, that in case if he's in a meeting and he has to take a flight, and the kind of traffic that is on the way to the airport, the tool should be able to prompt him to leave for the airport and so on and so forth, arrange for his cabs, which we are anyway doing it. I mean, which we are anyway doing it to a good extent with our employees, especially the crew. She gets to know which car has come to pick her up from the airport, from the hotel, or at the airport for her to go back home. What is the number of the car, the plate number, the driver's contact, and so on and so forth.
But on the customer side, it would be a delight factor. And
yeah, so what we are trying to do is that the same concept we are trying to see if we can apply in case of a customer, so that the most important thing is the engagement part of it. And then if you understand the customer, which we do not do it today, I mean, very frank and candid about it, we don't do it today. To an extent, especially with the retail outlets that you have at the airport. And if you have, as an airline, if you can have certain understanding, certain agreements with them, you can actually push the right customer. If he's a corporate customer, don't give him a 20 rupee voucher for a Costa coffee. I mean, that doesn't make sense to him. Okay, so we should be able to understand the customer in terms of what is he looking at. But if he's on a leisure travel, he's traveling with 4 of his family members, yes, probably a 20 rupee or a 50 rupee voucher or a 100 rupee voucher would actually help him, to get certain discounts on if he wants to pick up a cup of coffee for everybody. So understanding the customer from that perspective is extremely important. There are opportunities which we are not leveraging today. One thing, of course, as part of the digital travel credential, although it doesn't talk about the retail part of it as of now, it mainly talks about what we call it as a smart path. There are solutions in the market, but then those solutions alone cannot do everything unless the respective agencies and the stakeholders, for in our case, the security, the airport, the government, everybody will have to come in, because there is a lot of security and validation perspective to this in terms of ensuring that the customer's journey is smooth and contactless to the extent possible. I'll give you an example. I was traveling from Dubai back to India about 3 weeks back. And while I was coming back, my only credential was the QR code of my Emirates boarding pass on my mobile phone, and that's about it. I did not have to do anything else other than scan the passport at the immigration in those gates, automated gates that you have. So you have to scan. They take a scan of your face, because that's what you have given at the point of entry, which was 1 day before, or 2 days before, or 10 days. I'm not a resident of UAE, but I was just a visitor. But what they do is that they capture as much as possible. And this is possible only when there is a very tight coordination. In those countries, as you would know, the airports, the government, the airlines all come together. And that's what we have to do here.
Right, right. Very interesting point, Mr. Sinha. I'd like to take this to Mr. Sareen. Mr. Sareen, we've been talking about engaging customer at an early stage, engaging with him on the day of the journey, also bringing in this angle of biometrics, and to simplify things while this would lead to a lot of data collection, but then for the customer it becomes a lot more easier. And like Mr. Sinha also said towards the end, that all of this is an ecosystem play, and it really is. So how do you think the ecosystem should be made robust to leverage this strength, and how does all of this go into fueling a better customer experience?
Yes, what Mr. Sinha said is absolutely on dot. we have talked about the good things about the travel experience. I mean, what it should be, like right from the booking till the journey is complete, and then you have option to give the feedback. See, these are all rosy pictures which we normally get to know. The technology which has to work now is on certain situations. Like say in an Indian context, if I see, you have extreme weather conditions in north, east, west, south. People are traveling in these directions very much. There are disruptions. There are re-accommodations in the flights, technical snacks, all those things. Somehow the technology has to evolve in these areas, like say robotic process automation for the flight disruption, irregular operations. No matter whatever website I have, finally when the customer gets an experience of a smooth travel where there's no hitch, but the moment there is a disruption, the customer gets a beating. Whether it is like say in Heathrow, what happened for the baggage, it was a small, it's not a very small system, it's a very, very robust system which is operating at that point. But it happens, it happens. So for such eventualities, I think technology again has to evolve so that there are backup plans, better plans to handle the irregular operations, because that is a way of life. I mean,
So
if
you
I say,
mentioned RPA. What are the other ways in which some of these missing links? How do you think some of these gaps can be plugged? What are the other ways? You mentioned RPA, but what are some of the other ways in which technology can really rescue aviation industries when it comes to these level realities, these day-to-day challenges that you're bringing up? It's an interesting point that you've come up with.
yeah, what Mr. Sinha said, a country like UAE, they have a very cohesive aviation entity programs where people are mandated, I mean, those entities are mandated to work towards that goal. Like in our case, I think still regulator as well as government and the entities themselves, they have to come up to that level that they think for the passenger. That's the point. Technology is available always. It was always available. It's only a question of implementation.
Correct.
Now, what we call is we are collecting data. We are collecting data. At some point of time, we have to draw a line that how much is required. It should not happen that we go overboard to collect data and then we are tracking and the person feels that the person is under surveillance.
Right.
So that is the kind of feeling which comes. Like, so for example, I'll tell you, I mean, I have a DNS provider. I generally enter into that DNS platform for some configuration checking and routine check. When I go to YouTube, the same DNS provider comes to me, you buy a domain, you do this, you do that. They don't have a feedback mechanism that I'm already a customer. Same way, OTAs also do the same thing. I mean, you are overburdened by the data. You are pumped in so much of information, you get cheesed off. So all these, the multiple, like say, for example, in COVID case, people started fabricating PDF files for the COVID forms because it became an additional headache for them. So how much is rational that regulatory authorities also has to understand? We are putting passengers to inconvenience. No matter what technology you adopt, passenger is at inconvenience by additional information, which is not valid for the smooth travel. So these are the things which we should look at. I mean, in terms of evolving digital technology, the websites and pure security is not going to matter much. Everything has to be in place for the abnormalities also. That's the point.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Sareen. And now, Mr. Dalal, Mr. Sareen mentioned this point about how OTAs need to, have all the information about the customer. There's a level of granularity that is required towards this. How are you working? How are you approaching this problem, and how are you looking at the customer in such a level that you have all their information, their history, and you're able to service them better?
So, Sneha, being one of the, I would say, oldest
Pioneers in
OTA
the industry.
and pioneers in the industry, right? We have a lot of customer data. And for the last couple of years, we have been laying very lot of emphasis in understanding our customer, his buying behavior, right? His buying periods, what kind of ancillaries does the customer book. So we track the customer right from the time when the customer comes onto our website. So I'll give you an example. Sneha comes onto our MakeMatter website, and we are aware that Sneha is normally a corporate traveler who prefers to book early morning flight and late evening return flight. So our preference would be to show Sneha the right flight options for her, right? Once the flight booking has been done, we'll try to do a cross-sell by pushing Sneha to book a airport cab, right? And we also know a preference that Sneha, when the travel date is more than a day, would always try to book a 5-star hotel, which is near to the airport, right? So that is how the personalization cards open up on our site. And there's a lot of algorithm which works at the back end, right from the time tracking the customer behavior, their travel history, their travel patterns, right? So that's how we track our customers and try to make their booking a one-click booking.
Right, right. So nicely, you're closing the loop in terms of travel stay and all the other ancillary parts of the travel. So, Charlie, this is where I want to involve you in the conversation. The theme that's resonating over the last 2, 3 inputs that we've had is that organizations, whether it is OTAs or airline companies or cab service providers, are trying to provide a positive web experience while they're trying to provide a robust performance oriented experience. It should be secure, and all of this a positive web experience goes on to also leads to customer recommendations. But when it comes to this, there is no one size fit all. So how can organizations provide personalized web experiences, positive web experiences to their customers, so that then they are also able to get better customer recommendations, and they're able to take this forward and tap into this further?
Yes, well, certainly, from providing a personalized experience, I almost want to answer that question 2 ways. So answer number one is, this panel has been talking a lot about all the great ways that, data can be used and analyzed. And it's very interesting just to hear what this panel has to say about how, important it is to make all this happen. My second answer is really more from the technology perspective. Edgio is a leading technology provider for, travel and e-commerce. And, I guess one of the things that I would say is, if you think about processing that data and then presenting it to the customer, those are kind of different challenges. I'm hearing all of you on this panel, and thank you again for your wonderful insights. Hearing all of you on this panel talking about, we've got all this data. We want to try to understand our customer better. We want to try to make recommendations based on our customer preferences. We want to use machine learning to kind of process information almost in real time, learn more about people, and then present that information to the customer. So one of the challenges can be that you've got all this information and data that's sitting in a back end somewhere, but then the user is coming at it from the front end. And how do you connect those dots? How do you sort of streamline that flow of information from everything that to how to make it compelling to the customer? And I think there's several ways that I might think about doing that. And certainly one of them is just making the builder team, the team behind the scenes, really empowering them to streamline that process. And so, they have access to all this data. And then their challenge is to how to, we as an e-commerce company, a travel company, how do we present this and make it appealing to the customer? And so that's not an easy job for people to do. And so having a really streamlined platform that connects everything, connects the back end, connects the front end, is powerful. And then, we've talked a lot about how important it is to have this sort of, high performance experience where the user is really just getting this snappy response. And there's a few ways to do that. One of them is to use a CDN. Mr. Sarin, I think I had heard you talk about using a CDN. And that's great for, if you will, so what CDN does is it accelerates the process, but in general, it accelerates the process for, static information. pictures and things like that. But the dynamic information, this personalized information that we're all talking about, most CDNs cannot cache that personal information, cannot accelerate it. So the newest and freshest and most important data is actually slow. So that's one of the areas where Edgio can really help in terms of accelerating that dynamic information, accelerating that personalized information so that it flows from the back end to the front end very quickly and efficiently, and you're really giving that person the delight experience that they want. So that sort of, again, that dynamic nature of bringing it to life, bringing it from the back end to the user's experience, so that when they're tapping their device, when they're on their computer, it's right there for them. And then the second thing that I'll say is, we talk about personalization and understanding things. A/B testing is a great way to understand what works for your users. So A/B testing, I'm sure you all use it, presenting two different options and then seeing what performs well. One of the problems that a lot of people see with A/B testing is that it's too slow. Performing an A/B test actually ruins performance. It can make performance much, much worse. And we've heard this over and over again, where people want to try to, test two different interfaces, but they end up slowing down both. And so it does more harm than good. Edgio is great at making A/B testing and other kinds of user experience testing performant, so it doesn't slow down the experience. So those are just a couple of ways that sort of the technology that Edgio brings can help bring to life these great ideas that I'm hearing from you good folks on the panel.
Right. Thank you so much, Charlie. Now, I'd like to delve a little deeper into one of the themes that was recurring during the conversation that we were having with all of you. We made a very passing reference to security, and security is really critical in the travel sector, because one small breach can tarnish the brand perception, and it can have a very lasting impact on the business, especially in these days of social media, when one security breach or a bad travel experience could snowball into a big social media crisis. So what steps have you taken to ensure that security considerations are met with utmost consistency? I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on this. We can start off with Mr. Sinha.
Yes, there is no doubt security is just not it has to be done kind of stuff, but it definitely needs to be done. So we follow the typically what companies would do is that they would follow the standard processes in terms of ensuring procedures, in terms of ensuring that the sites, be it a mobile site, be it a website or whatever, any kind of internet facing applications are secured, and that there are different ways of doing it. You can periodically do penetration tests and this and that and so on and so forth. I don't want everybody knows about it. I don't want to get into details. More importantly is the data of the customers that we are capturing, the personal data, that has to be really secured. So that's not only on the website and all that, because whenever there is an hacker who comes, his objective is just not to stop your website from working. His objective is to get hands-on the data which is behind that, and that's very important. And then the standard procedures, the standard practices, industry best practices will have to be followed if one is exposing applications, data, etc., to the outside world. So
right. Mr. Sarin?
Yeah, he is very right on that part. I mean, we as airlines, like say, we are the controllers, and then there are multiple processes of the same data. I mean, we have passed it on to other processes, the same set of data, which we have taken the consent from the passengers or the travelers. So one is the framework of information security that has to be followed, which are governed by the Indian context, even the foreign lands wherever we operate. Then we try to do a single source of truth. We don't want to try to keep the data pocketed on the individual end devices. There should be a central repository, which is a single source of truth and well protected with the right kind of technologies, with the data centers having the requisite standard tier 4, something like that. I mean, all whatever information security standards are there, they are governed by those processes. And then there is a contractual obligation with the processors also that they follow all those privacy laws and information security standards they are governing. So that's the key thing. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. And as far as internet is concerned, our own employees, we have started using the zero trust network architecture. So where they always use a secure internet gateway and multi-factor authentication authenticated by the Active Directory. So that's how we manage that.
Right. Nirmal?
Mr. Sinha said it's not an option, right? So that's something that we have to start with for sure. It's like for sure it has to be there. But one extra level of detail that we generally end up having is that here we are a two-sided marketplace, and both sides are actually individuals. Which also, and there is an asset which is a car which is moving from one person to another, and where this car is going. For example, a host who's put a car on the platform, knowing where the car is going while it's on a trip with a guest, that is not something that we want, right? There's a privacy breach. So apart from all the things that you mentioned, we also have one more layer here where whoever has access to the car during the time, that is when the person gets to, he's the only person who will have access to his data. The other side of the platform will not have access. Platform will always be capturing, but will never make it available for a person unless, for example, what happens if there's an accident or a theft or something like that? That is when the data is used. Otherwise, that's not true. So yeah, we are pretty clear that that is something that is to be done. And there have been cases where, for example, even let's say when we are all building new, right? There are cases where you all learn. There are cases where let's say a contractor got access to some data that was used in the wrong way. All of these are problems that we all learn from, and I think now we have put a lot more stricter policies around it. There is number masking on every call that happens. You don't have a choice who you want to make a call to. All that those are things that we have put in place now.
Mr. Dalal, how are you looking at making your security more proactive, since you handle so many customers on a daily basis and collect so much of their information?
So Sneha, we have technology platforms implemented right from the perimeter to the endpoint security, right? And all the customer information, the PII information which we collect, it remains in an encrypted store, and all the calling applications which need that information connect using a unique user identifier. So the naked customer information is not available to any other application. Only the required information will be passed upon basis the user identification parameter which has been set, right? And on the endpoint controls, because there are a lot of contact center agents which handle our customer queries and all of that. So the number, email ID, everything remains masked. The information or the PII information is need to know basis only, right? And endpoint DLP controls ensure that the organization, the data doesn't leave the organization. So we have controls in place right from the perimeter to the endpoint, and we have a 24/7 SOC, which monitors the entire network and based on certain data science model, monitors the anomalies and alerts the SOC in case if there is an anomaly seen in any user behavior, any traffic pattern coming to a respective application. So that is how we control.
Right, right. Charlie, would you like to talk about how Edgio helps organizations deal with security in a proactive manner?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess I think of Edgio as being a company that has tremendous tools today and for the future as well. And so, security today is, web application firewalls and DDoS and bot mitigation. and security that's kind of built into the platform. But we also see, the future is coming, right? We've got a big travel season coming up in October to March, and we're always thinking ahead and always thinking forward. So of course, there's always new things coming, both in security and also in the development platforms. And Edgio gives people the tools that they need today to protect their site, make it performant, make it easy to release. And then we're very much with an eye on the future in terms of how to continue to improve the experience for users, improve the experience for developers, and improve security.
Right. Thanks, Charlie. Now, at this juncture, I think I'll take a question from the audience. So there's a question which is, what metrics should you measure in evaluating customer experience? I think Mr. Dalal alluded to this in his first response, but still, if anybody could take this. Mr. Sareen, Mr. Sinha, Nirmal. Who would like to go first?
I'm sure all of us would be looking at NPS as the biggest metric that we look at, right? I'm sure, and yeah, we are a young company. We still look at that. We are working on improving that as we go. And companies like MMT are a model for us. We are amazed by the kind of support that they provide. And yeah, so NPS clearly is one of the metrics that we look at. Obviously, on top of that, in terms of performance of the app, obviously we look at load times and things like that, right? So those are every day there is an effort to bring that as low as possible, to bring the option to the customer within possibly less than a second. That is what we want to look at, right? And there are teams working on those, but NPS remains the most important metric for most of us.
Right. Mr. Sinha, Mr.
Yeah.
Sareen, would anyone of you take it?
Yeah, I can mention. I think I fully agree with Mr. Nirmal Kumar. And having said that, yes, of course, one of the yardsticks would be, how much of revenue are you earning from all this investment that you are doing there. From airlines in India, I don't think that's a very encouraging figure as of now. Okay, but hopefully we will get there where we have to get. And the third part is, and we can actually derive more out of the e-commerce platform, as I'm basically talking about airlines in India, as long as we keep on engaging with our customers to the best extent possible. So that's very important. And of course, that would show up in their NPS, whether it shows up there or not show up there. The other part is that how much revenue am I generating out of all this investment that we are doing at this point of time.
Right.
But there is one more thing which is coming in, as a matter of fact. If you see, worldwide between 2019, 2020, while we all know that, the travel commerce actually, the travel actually increased significantly between 2018 and 2019, 2019, 2020, before the pandemic hit us. And at that point of time, travel e-commerce contributed to about 9% of that growth, totaling to about $16-17 billion. And this I'm talking about travel e-commerce. So once we go back to that level or even higher, obviously the expectations and the metrics will change, which will be also very, different. Some will stay, some will become irrelevant. So we'll have to look at from that perspective as well.
Right, it's a evolving target.
Yeah.
Mr. Sareen?
Yeah, I would personally feel, right now in an Indian context, these metrics, as of now, they are still in an evolving stage. As Mr. Sinha said, how much investments are enough for gauging that and reaching up to that level, that is still evolving, because the market consolidation and like say multiple airlines are getting consolidated. How it will evolve in future, it will all depend on that scenario. As of now, I will say, I'll put it, it's not still mature to say that, we'll reach there. It is still evolving.
Right. Charlie, what are you seeing from an industry perspective here?
I guess I would call out Google Core Web Vitals. So Google Core Web Vitals is really interesting because for the first time, the performance of your site and the performance of your application actually impacts your traffic. In the old days, performance was important once people were on your site. Now, performance actually becomes part of your search engine ranking. Faster sites are able to get a higher search engine ranking. And we've seen that translate to higher traffic and conversions and revenue. So Google Core Web Vitals is a metric I think people ought to be looking at.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Charlie. I think with that, we will wrap up today's session. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your insights and perspectives with us in the time that we had. We tried to understand how how all of you are leveraging digital technologies to improve customer experience, to improve employee experience, and how are you trying to create a positive convenient experience for your travel experience for your customers, a proper how are you dealing with dynamic pricing models, dynamic demand spikes and surges in the demand. We also spoke about some of the futuristic plans that you all have, and how there is a need for making the ecosystem more robust and cohesive. We got an industry perspective from Charlie on how when he spoke about how we need to make the online experience seamless, frictionless, secure. And I think with that, we will also be looking forward to some of the interesting innovations that each of you would be undertaking in your organizations. Thank you so much for joining in this session today. Thanks once again, Mr. Sinha, Mr. Sareen, Mr. Dalal, Nirmal, Charlie, and a big thank you to all our audiences for tuning in into this session. Thanks once again. Have a great weekend, all of you.